Charles sighed as he realized what was going on. He'd just walked into this motel next to the highway, and outside he had seen a sign saying that there were still 48 rooms available. The woman behind the counter, however, was telling him that all the rooms were taken already. This wasn't the first time that someone treated Charles like this, but he wasn't going to argue. He knew from experience that that never worked. Instead, he was going to do something much worse, and his revenge would be sweet. "Ma'am, are you sure about that? The sign outside said that you still had some free rooms." He tried one more time. Perhaps the woman would change her mind, and there would be no reason for him to take action. However, the woman insisted that she did not have a single room available anymore. "All right then, thank you," Charles replied politely, and he left. It was a shame, really. He returned to his car and sat inside it, thinking about the best way to approach the situation. The problem was that he really needed a room for tonight, and this motel was the only one in the area. If he couldn't get a room here, he'd have to sleep in his car, and he preferred a comfortable bed. However, the woman had already denied him a room twice, and he doubted she'd be any more welcoming if he tried a third time. No, that wasn't going to work with her. Luckily, Charles didn't have to think long before he finally came up with a plan. It would be the perfect lesson for the woman behind the counter. It was obvious that she had denied him a room because he was a foreigner. He'd met many people like her before, and he could see the disdain in her eyes when she looked at him. He wasn't going to get angry or start a fight, but he would definitely show her that how she treated him was wrong. Charles sat in his car for a while, waiting until he felt that the time was right to put his plan into action. He looked at the many new guests who entered the motel, and he saw the number of free rooms on the sign outside fall from 48 to 37. He shook his head and asked himself, "Is this ever going to change?" Of course, he was frustrated. He did not deserve to be treated differently purely because of his skin color. Sadly, the hotel receptionist did not share his views on this. He put his bags in the trunk and locked his car before heading back into the lobby. It was time for the confrontation, and Charles was determined to get a room for the night. Charles walked into the lobby again with a smile on his face. As soon as the receptionist saw him, the smile on her face immediately disappeared, and she put her mean face back on. "Sir, I already told you, I can't help you," she told Charles curtly. He simply nodded and asked, "Still no rooms available for me?" But the woman ignored him and continued typing on her computer. "Very well, I don't mind waiting here for a bit," Charles thought to himself. He walked around the lobby for a few minutes, inspecting the paintings that hung on the walls, and at some point, he even got himself a bottle of water and a candy bar from the vending machine in the corner. He was in no hurry to leave. Actually, it was all part of his plan. He waited and waited, returning the receptionist's occasional dirty looks with a polite smile, until finally, he heard the sound he had been waiting for. A car arriving in the parking lot in front of the motel. He stared out the window and watched a young couple with 2 kids get out of the car and enter the lobby. As they entered, the receptionist put her smile back on. "Good evening. How can I help you today?" she asked. The couple greeted her back and then, obviously, asked for a room. The receptionist didn't immediately reply, and she quickly glanced at Charles, who was still looking out the window, pretending not to hear their conversation. It didn't really surprise him that the receptionist told this couple, "Of course, what kind of room would you like?" and then proceeded to list all the available options. They booked a family room for one night, finished the paperwork, paid up front, and left for their room. Now it was just Charles and the receptionist in the lobby again. "That's odd," Charles said. I thought all your rooms were taken already." "Could I book a single room for tonight?" he asked, curious what the receptionist would do now that he had obviously caught her lying. "Nope, still no rooms available," she replied, and she left her desk, leaving Charles all alone and full of disbelief. Was this woman being serious? This was unacceptable. Charles sat down on a chair and ate his candy bar as he thought about just giving up and sleeping in his car. It was just one night, and it wasn't that big of a deal. Of course, he still had no idea that his story was going to blow up, and the receptionist would get what she deserved. He waited for the woman to return, but she did not come back for quite a while. Even when an elderly couple entered the lobby, she still did not show up. The couple chatted with Charles for a bit, and as soon as they realized what was going on exactly, they decided to help him. Luckily, there were still plenty of good people left in the world. Finally, the receptionist returned, and she put on her kindest smile for the couple. "Good evening, sir, madam. How can I help you today?" she asked, and she was obviously taken by surprise when she heard what they asked her next. "Miss, is there any way you could help this kind man out and give him a room for the night?" The elderly woman, Mrs. Waverly, subtly activated the recording feature on her phone. Holding it nonchalantly in her lap, she captured Charles's patient voice. The lobby's ambient sounds were punctuated by Charles's persistent yet respectful requests for a room and the receptionist's curt rebuttals. Mrs. Waverly maintained her composure, understanding that she held a powerful tool, the truth. "Why can't you understand, sir? We don't have any rooms," the receptionist snapped. Her voice dripped with condescension and a hint of derision. Charles, in his calm demeanor, replied, "The sign outside, ma'am. It still indicates availability." Mrs. Waverly's heart ached to hear the receptionist's harsh words. She glanced around the room, ensuring no one suspected her covert operation. Charles took a deep breath. "Ma'am, I'm just seeking a place to rest for the night," he tried again, but the receptionist was unyielding. "We have our policies, sir," she said evasively. Charles's eyes, though saddened, showed no sign of defeat. Mrs. Waverly's grip on her phone tightened, feeling the weight of the prejudice unfolding before her. Mrs. Waverly adjusted her glasses, subtly angling her phone to ensure it captured every interaction. The tension in the room was palpable. Guests whispered, casting glances in Charles's direction, clearly uncomfortable yet unsure of how to help. Mrs. Waverly knew the key to change was in her hands, with the power of recorded truth. The conversation eventually dwindled, and Charles took a step back, resigned yet dignified. Mrs. Waverly discreetly ended the recording and locked her phone. She had captured undeniable proof of the bias Charles faced. But what to do next? For now, she kept it to herself, pondering the best way to support the kind stranger in the face of injustice. The receptionist's blatant prejudice hadn't gone unnoticed. Guests whispered among themselves, eyebrows furrowing in concern. "Did you hear how she treated that man?" one guest murmured. Another chimed in, "It's clear why she won't give him a room." The undertone of sympathy for Charles was evident, and so was the growing disdain for the receptionist's actions. As more guests entered, Charles approached the counter again, hope undimmed. "Ma'am, I noticed more people checking in. May I try for a room now?" he inquired. The receptionist, with the eyes of several guests upon her, retorted, "I already told you, sir, nothing's available." The disparity was now open for all to see, deepening the rift of injustice. The lobby began to fill with more guests. Some already knew of Charles's plight, while others sensed the palpable tension and sought to understand its origin. Whispers about the incident grew louder. a real-time commentary on the motel's blatant discrimination. The receptionist's discomfort grew as she realized more were observing her actions. Even with increasing attention, the receptionist held her ground. "Sir, please," she said with a note of exasperation, "there's no room for you here." Charles's frustration was evident, but his demeanor remained calm. He glanced around, noting the varying expressions of empathy, concern, and disbelief among the onlookers. As yet another guest checked in effortlessly, Charles's predicament became a glaring spotlight on the motel's questionable ethics. The onlookers' collective mood swayed towards indignation. Whispers became more audible discussions. The receptionist, sensing the shift, became increasingly defensive. But Charles, surrounded by a growing group of supporters, began to realize he wasn't alone in this fight. The reception area buzzed with quiet murmurs. Amid this, a young family, a spirited mother, protective father, and their inquisitive toddler navigated the crowd to reach Charles. Shadows from the overhead chandeliers danced on the floor as the father cleared his throat. "Sir, we've witnessed this evening's events. The mistreatment you've faced is undeniably unjust." The mother stepped closer, her voice gentle yet firm. "If it's all right with you, we'd like you to share our room. No guest, or any person for that matter, should experience what you have today." Their child, blue eyes wide with innocence, tugged at Charles's coat. Their offer was not just a mere act of sharing, it was a bold statement against the blatant injustice he had endured. Taken aback by the unexpected kindness, Charles felt a knot in his throat. "I can't express how much this means," he responded, his voice quivering. "Today's been overwhelming." Their shared gaze conveyed a silent understanding. In this moment, amidst the unsettling prejudice, stood a heartfelt act of compassion. The father's brows furrowed with determination. "We've decided. If this establishment can't treat its guests with basic respect, we'll find another place." His words echoed the sentiment of many in the room. The mother nodded in fierce agreement, her arms wrapped protectively around her child. Their message was clear. They were putting their values and principles before their own comfort. The hours that followed were filled with deep conversations. Charles and the family dove into topics of life, equality, and the importance of standing up against prejudice. Their discussions weren't just about the events of the evening, but about a shared worldview, which became the foundation of a deep mutual bond. Later, in her quaint room, adorned with vintage wallpaper, Mrs. Waverly made a choice. Uploading her discreet recording, she hoped to shine a light on the discrimination she had witnessed. With a concise caption detailing the events, she hit post. Immediately, her device was lit with notifications. As dawn approached, the video had amassed a significant amount of views. Users from all walks of life shared, commented, and expressed their disbelief. The digital realm became a platform for those who wanted to voice their anger, share their stories, and rally behind Charles, demanding an end to such behavior. The digital tidal wave was swift and overwhelming. Influential figures and activists amplified Mrs. Waverly's post. As the sun bathed the town in its morning glow, blogs, podcasts, and other platforms featured Charles's ordeal, emphasizing the need for accountability. Mainstream media couldn't ignore the story any longer. Local news stations sent reporters to the motel, seeking statements from all parties involved. Charles's story, once confined to the walls of a motel, now echoed across TV screens nationwide, shedding light on a much larger issue. The backlash was immediate. Bookings at the motel dwindled, and negative reviews poured in. Protesters, holding signs demanding justice, began to gather. The receptionist's thoughtless actions had spiraled into a full-blown crisis for the establishment. With their reputation on the line, it became imperative for the motel's management to respond effectively and quickly. Bright morning sunlight glinted off news vans, revealing bold logos of various media houses. Antennas reached skyward, indicating live broadcasts were imminent. Reporters, buzzing with anticipation, spoke to their cameramen, setting up shots outside the motel's main entrance. For anyone familiar with the establishment, it was clear this wasn't a standard morning. Charles stood strong, recounting his ordeal with clarity and grace. The injustice he faced resonated with everyone listening. Mrs. Waverly, an unexpected ally in this saga, and her husband narrated their side, emphasizing the importance of standing against prejudice. Each testimony, blending seamlessly into the next, painted a powerful narrative for viewers worldwide. The usually confident receptionist now appeared vulnerable under the media's relentless gaze. Her eyes, red from the weight of recent events, darted nervously. Standing beside her, the manager seemed equally rattled, trying to articulate responses that might save face. Their joint appearance was a testament to their shared realization of the enormity of the situation. By midday, the story was everywhere. Social media was ablaze with fiery comments as users shared and reshared the incident. Negative reviews of the motel poured in, and the establishment's star rating plummeted. The power of collective digital voices was evident, and the motel's once pristine image now had an indelible stain. As dusk approached, the mood outside the motel was thick with expectation. National talk shows had taken up the story, analyzing each facet. Online petitions demanded action, and the public, with bated breath, awaited a response. The ball was firmly in the motel's court, and the next move would be crucial. The sun's rays began to slant, casting long shadows on the pavement as guests decisively made their way out. Their bags spoke of hasty departures, their faces of firm resolve. Conversations revolved around standing up to bigotry, and the departure lounge became a ground for solidarity, making a statement louder than words. The sprawling parking lot, which once teemed with life, was eerily quiet. Family cars, vacation vehicles, and business rentals were noticeably fewer. The subtle noises, distant laughter, car engines, the hum of activity, all but disappeared. A once thriving hub now stood silent, echoing the sentiments of its departing patrons. Inside his dimly lit office, the manager grappled with the crisis. Spread out in front of him were reservation charts, daily logs, and reports. The numbers told a story of prosperity, now threatened. He ruminated over choices, understanding that the road to redemption was long, and deciding the first step was crucial. Ledgers and financial forecasts, once symbols of the motel's success, now foretold potential doom. Revenues were at risk, and the thought of compensations and legal battles was daunting. The sheer scale of the economic implications began to sink in, adding financial worry to an already tarnished reputation. Determined to salvage what remained, the manager called a pivotal meeting. Senior staff gathered, brainstorming strategies to address the issue. They contemplated outreach programs, PR campaigns, and community healing sessions. The essence was clear. Rectifying their error was paramount, and the journey to regain trust had only just begun. In the midst of chaos, Charles, with a heart full of resilience and an aim to bring about change, approached the manager. He said, "This situation could have been avoided with a little understanding and empathy. Have you ever considered diversity training for your staff?" His calm demeanor and constructive suggestion caught the manager off guard, prompting him to reconsider the establishment's approach. The manager, visibly moved, took a deep breath. "I hadn't thought of it," he confessed, his eyes showing regret. But now, seeing the repercussions of our ignorance, it's clear we must act. He extended his hand towards Charles. We have to make amends. Thank you for pointing out a path forward. The atmosphere, though tense, hinted at the beginning of reconciliation. By the next day, the manager was in active discussions with diversity experts. A well-structured plan was laid out, complete with workshops and sessions on various facets of diversity, race, gender, religion, and beyond. Flyers, schedules, and awareness posters started appearing around the motel, reflecting its renewed commitment to fostering an inclusive environment for all guests. As the training commenced, its effects rippled through the motel. Employees began engaging in more open dialogues. Guests noticed the difference too, as the staff interacted with enhanced empathy and understanding. Whispers among the regular patrons hinted at their appreciation of this transformation. Charles's suggestion, though simple, was leading to profound shifts in the motel's culture. Reflecting on everything, Charles felt an unexpected emotion: hope. While the incident had caused pain, it also sparked a wave of positive change. From the corner of his eye, as he watched the sun dip below the horizon, Charles felt it wasn't a goodbye to the motel, but rather a hopeful promise of more inclusive tomorrows. Nestled among his neatly packed belongings, Charles discovered an envelope he hadn't seen before. Sliding it out from under the hotel stationery, he noticed his name inscribed in elegant script. His heart quickened slightly, intrigued by this unexpected find. He carefully unsealed the envelope, revealing a letter that carried a weight of importance, even before the first line was read. "Dear Charles," the letter began, "I am the owner of this motel chain." As Charles delved deeper, he was surprised to learn that the owner was a person of color. The owner's heartfelt gratitude for exposing an ongoing issue was evident. He expressed a deep understanding and compassion, recounting moments of shared pain from his own past. The connection was palpable. The owner shared tales of his youth, painting vivid pictures of his experiences with discrimination. He recalled being turned away from establishments, facing prejudices that stung just as freshly today. "Your story resonated with me," he confided, echoing episodes from my own life. "It's heartbreaking that my establishment perpetuated what I had once endured." The letter shifted towards a more determined and resolute tone. The owner pledged a massive overhaul of the motel's existing policies, ensuring inclusivity and respect for all. He detailed plans for intensive diversity training programs and stricter accountability measures. Charles could feel a whirlwind of emotions as he comprehended the gravity of the change his actions had initiated. Absorbing the owner's words, Charles felt an overwhelming blend of validation and hope. He realized that his personal ordeal was now the catalyst for a more significant change, transcending a single incident at a single motel. It was heartening to see that his journey had led to a revolution within a vast establishment. Standing at the room's threshold, Charles took a moment to reminisce. This wasn't just a motel room, it was a space that bore witness to monumental transformation. The feelings of pain, injustice, and, eventually, hope were all intertwined within these walls. Packing his bags, he felt a profound fulfillment, confident that his efforts had not been for naught. Walking towards his car, memories of the past few days played in Charles's mind. He thought of the elderly couple, the guests, the media, and the young family who had shown unyielding support. The collective power that had enveloped him served as a reminder that, when united, people can overcome the most ingrained prejudices. Sliding into the driver's seat, Charles started his car, its engine softly humming. He looked ahead, feeling an internal pull towards the endless road and possibilities. The motel, once a symbol of prejudice, now stood as a beacon of change. With renewed vigor, Charles drove on, his spirit buoyed by recent events. The motel sign caught his eye as he accelerated away. "Fully occupied," it proclaimed. But to Charles, it signified more than just occupancy. It was a testament to inclusivity, signaling a place of acceptance for everyone, regardless of their background. A smile played on his lips, acknowledging the profound evolution that had unfolded. Word of Charles's dignified resistance spread far and wide, resonating with many. His story, laced with calm resilience, served as a testament to the transformative power of patience and persistence. Charles's legacy became a beacon for many, inspiring them to challenge age-old biases, proving that change often emerges from quiet yet determined resistance against deep-seated injustices.